Hi. I saw the countdown and completely ignored it. Welcome back to another episode of the Eek of the Week. I'm your host, Albert Einstein, but you can call me Allie with an OWL. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. We're still doing cults. I am, I don't want to say obsessed, but I'm obsessed with the cult stories. These have been a lot of fun to. These have been also been educational, but it's been a lot of fun to narrate these AI generated case file style stories about some fictional cults, some non fictional. The last one was non fictional, is absolutely real. I saw a very good documentary, and I cannot remember the creator on YouTube that put it out there about Love is One and Mother God and all of that, and her blue skin from colloidal silver, that whole thing. This one is about probably one of the most infamous and notorious cults in American history. This one's about Jonestown, and I really hope that I have not read this yet, but I really hope the bot does us, does us right, and gets into the nitty gritty details about this guy. Let's see. Before we get into it, listener discretion is strongly advised. We're talking about sensitive topics that might be disturbing or triggering for some people. We're talking about cults, cult leaders. We're talking about very disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you're not into that kind of stuff, maybe look into one of the more PG rated episodes down below of the shorter AI generated horror stories that aren't really horrible. They're pretty good. But yes, let's get into Jonestown. This is another Dark Files episode. This is called Jonestown: The Pastor, the Poison, and the Pile of Dead. You've heard the phrase before, don't drink the Kool-Aid. It's a joke now. People say it in offices, in politics, on Twitter, when someone falls for a bad idea. But let me remind you of something. That phrase is soaked in blood. It comes from the largest mass murder-suicide in American history. 918 people dead. I stumbled over that number. 918 people dead. Over 300 of them children. It didn't happen in a war zone. It didn't happen in secret. It happened at a jungle compound built by a man who said he was the second coming of Christ, and maybe the only real socialist America ever had. This is the Dark Files, and tonight we travel into the howling, humid, hallucinatory hell of a place called Jonestown, where faith, fear, and madness melted together in a vat of cyanide. This is the case of Jim Jones and the final fatal sermon of the People's Temple. James Warren Jones, born 1931, Indiana, grew up poor, dirt floor poor, obsessively religious, but not just fire and brimstone. He was fascinated by race, power, Marxism, and control. As a teenager, he held funerals for roadkill, eulogizing animals in front of neighborhood kids like he was a backwoods priest. He was magnetic, creepy, brilliant. By the 1950s, he had started his own church, the People's Temple Full Gospel Church. And here's where it gets complicated. Because for a while, Jim Jones did good. He adopted orphans of every race, preached integration in the middle of Jim Crow America. He fed the poor, housed the homeless, even got media attention for being a rainbow pastor. But underneath that smile, something was rotting. He wore dark glasses, even indoors, told people he had divine visions, claimed he was both God and the reincarnation of Lenin, forced followers to call him Father, and said repeatedly that America was going to kill him for speaking the truth. And maybe worse, he was right about the killing part. He just didn't mention who would be doing it. By the late 60s, the People's Temple had grown into thousands of followers, spread across California, especially in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Jones was politically connected, charismatic, and dangerous. But reporters started digging. Ex-members talked of beatings, of staged healings, of drug abuse, of Jones raping both men and women who confessed to him, of children raised communally and separated from their parents. He was being hunted by the press. So Jim Jones made a move. He took his people, nearly 1,000 of them, and disappeared into the jungle of Guyana, South America. There, he promised them paradise. They called it Jonestown, but what they built was a prison. Imagine this. You're sweating through your shirt. Mosquitoes the size of bullets bite through your skin. The food was rotting. You work the fields all day, 7 days a week. You're told what to say, who to marry, what to believe. Armed guards roam the compound. You're not allowed to leave. And every night, you listen to Jim Jones broadcast sermons over loudspeakers while you sleep, sometimes 6-7 hours long. People called them white knights. That's not a metaphor. That's what they were really called. Jones would wake the entire commune at 2 a.m. and say the CIA was coming or that nuclear war had started. And then he'd make them rehearse mass suicide over and over again. It was a test of loyalty until one night it wasn't a rehearsal anymore. November 18th, 1978. U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan flew to Guyana to investigate the compound. Reporters and defectors joined him. Jones welcomed them at first, but cracks were showing. Some members slipped Ryan notes begging for help. When the delegation tried to leave with 15 defectors, Jones snapped. He sent armed men after them. On the airstrip at Port Kaituma, the guards opened fire. Congressman Ryan was shot over 20 times. His brain burst open on the tarmac. A reporter's leg was nearly blown off. A cameraman captured his own death on film. Back in Jonestown, the final white night had begun. Jim Jones told his followers they were under attack, that the government was coming, that death was the only escape. And then he brought out the vat. Let's talk about what was actually in that vat. It wasn't Kool-Aid. That's a myth. It was Flavor Aid, a cheaper knockoff mixed with cyanide, chloral hydrate, a sedative, Phenergan, and Valium. Industrial quantities, enough to kill hundreds. They started with the children. The babies were dosed first. Mothers forced to squirt poison into their infants' mouths with syringes. Kids screaming, convulsing, foaming at the lips. Their skin turning blue, then black, as their lungs collapsed from within. Jones's guards stood watch with rifles. Then the adults drank. Some didn't want to. Some ran. They were gunned down in the jungle. One woman slit her own child's throat instead of giving him poison. Another tried to hide under a bunk. A few escaped into the trees and heard the moaning, the sobbing, the dry heaves of 900 people choking on chemical death. The recording of that final sermon still exists. You can hear Jones shouting over the screams. "We didn't commit suicide. We committed an act of revolutionary suicide, protesting the conditions of an inhumane world." As if that explained the dead children piled like garbage in the mud. By the time it was over, there were 918 corpses. 276 of them were kids. The youngest was just 11 months old. Jim Jones didn't drink the poison. He was found slumped over a chair, a .38 revolver shot through his head. Whether he did it himself, no one knows. But the horror he left behind was biblical. The Guyanese government didn't have enough body bags. Corpses baked in the heat for days. Skin peeled off in sheets. Eyeballs exploded. Maggots boiled under the surface. American troops eventually airlifted the bodies out in crates marked as cargo. Entire families were found still holding hands. And now, Jonestown is just a punchline, a meme. But here's the truth. The People's Temple wasn't made up of lunatics. It was made up of hopeful people, idealists, families, dreamers. Many of them were black, poor, searching for justice. And they were used by a man who wrapped poison in the language of salvation. Because that's how cults work. They don't tell you it ends in cyanide. They tell you it ends in love. This has been The Dark Files. And tonight, if you hear a voice in the dark offering you paradise for the price of obedience, run. Because some gods don't ask for worship. They ask for your children. Thank you so much for listening along, and we'll see you in the next one.